On the Blood Trail is brought to you by Man Mountain Company. Experience peak flavor.
Oh, freaking smoked him, man. Gorgeous 4x4, full velvet whitetail. That is awesome. What a rush. That was crazy, man. How do you like that? Hey, how do you like that? Alrighty, I'm joined today by Brandon Heather of the Held Accountable podcast. Brandon is somebody who has had me on his podcast a couple of times, and we've talked about having you on here, and finally, here we are. So how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm really good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm excited to talk about hunting. Like, I feel like some people, when I have them on here, I have to take a pile of notes because I have all these things I want to hammer out specifically. I feel like tonight we're just kind of let it run and see where it goes. But
just rip her off the cuff, man. I like that.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yeah, keep it casual.
Yes, sir.
I guess the newest bit of story, I guess, from what we've talked about is you got a brand new bow set up, and you just got it today. You got it put together. What is it, and what made you decide to go with what you picked out?
Okay, well, what is it? It's a Bear Execute 30. Probably not what people are expecting to hear. They're probably thinking Matthews, Hoyt, PSC's creeping in there and all the talk. Man, the reason why, well, let's be real. I'm a blue collar guy. I'm an average guy. We're average guys, and money is money. And these Matthews is a lot of money. Hoyt's a lot of money. When you're dad and you got wife and kids and you got to put the big boy pants on every day, it's hard to spend all that money, and I feel selfish. So just drove myself crazy looking at bows, talking to my wife, everything else. And she actually, it's usually how it works. She says, you know what, just go for it. And then I end up changing my mind. It's weird how that's how we work together. But she's like, just buy the Matthews, just go for it. Like, and then I was like, really? And I was like, no, I don't want it. It's funny. It's just funny how that works. And then I just happened to be on, her name's Haley Daniels, on archery, on her website there, Ontario Archery Supply. And I noticed Bear Execute. It's a 2023 bow. It was their flagship bow. It was on clearance, and I was like, really piqued my interest because I can't deny, man, I shoot bears well. I have pretty much my whole bow hunting career. I've shot them really well. So I was like, you know what? If I could buy that at that clearance price and put a spot hog on it and put some good accessories on it, put some more money into arrows, I'm still going to be cheaper than a Matthews Bear bow. So I was like,
no, that's fair.
So that's kind of what did it for me. And I'm a sucker. I'm weird. I just love plain colors, and it was in a stone gray. So that just kind of helped make it an easier decision. But
oh, there you go. Yeah.
I mean, that's my reasons why. I mean, aside from that, like, I like the 30-inch axle. It's got a good IBO of 340. I watched some reviews. They were good reviews. So it's kind of like they all do the job. And why not save like $2,000, literally? Because Matthews would cost that by the time you get the. Because I mean, why would you buy Matthews and not put a bridge lock on it? Why would you buy Matthews and not, you know what I mean, or a Hoyt even for that matter, not just burning up Matthews, but even Hoyt, right? They've got all their stuff too. It's like, so it's kind of that's why I did what I did and save some dollars, and it's I know it's gonna be a great bow. It's gonna do its job, and that's my decision making basically right there. So
no, that's awesome. I mean, a person works hard for their money, and you want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. And another thing too that's very archery specific is like and I tell a lot of people this too, because I'm not a huge bow guru, but if you're trying to pick a bow and you want to know what you shoot the best, go and try a bunch. There's a good chance
100%.
that what you think that you're going to shoot well is not what you're actually going to end up walking out of there with, right?
100%, man. Yeah,
And
I
like
agree
you
with
said,
that.
you shoot bear archery well, so
Yeah,
there you go. Might as well shoot a
yeah.
bear, right?
Might as well shoot a bear. Yeah,
Exactly. And then the other part of it too, like you said, put a spot hog on it. It's comparing it to rifle hunting. There's a lot of guys that'll go out and they'll buy a top of the line $2,000 rifle, and
yeah,
then they'll throw a cheapy scope on there,
yeah,
and then they're not really using that rifle to its capabilities,
yeah,
right? So put a
yeah. I
little more
think
into the accessories and a little
exactly.
less on the bow,
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
getting more out of it.
Yeah, I think so. 100%. Like if you're, I'll be honest, I could still shoot my bear agenda, and I thought about it. I thought about just putting new strings cables on it, giving it some TLC, and upgrading everything on it too. But it's like, yeah, new is nice, and
Hmm.
it's like, why not? But like at the end of the day, you gotta be confident in what you have. So if you don't like your sight,
Absolutely.
or you don't like your pins, or you don't like something, change it. Be confident
Yep.
in what you got. It just doesn't matter, And like I look at the bow, and I have to admit, like I'm stoked. Like I gotta finally put a spot hog on it. I would have never spent, you know, north of $400 on a sight ever in the past, but it's like, you know what, I'm gonna do it.
Hmm.
So
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
man.
man. I don't know if you're this way. I know that I used to be, and kind of still am, but it's like every year you don't have any reason to change anything with your archery setup. You're
No,
like, you know what? I think I need to change something, and then you
I
kind of
think,
run through every
oh yeah,
little piece, and then you're like, well,
dude,
maybe it'll be
like
this.
I'm literally at my like where I fletch arrows, and like I bought new vanes because I'm like, well, I'll try them. I bought
Yeah.
another. What else? I bought another vane to the AE Max Pro Hunter or whatever, and I was like, I'm gonna try them. Like, you don't need to,
Hmm.
man. If it ain't broke, you don't have to fix it. But I think
Yeah.
I think that's what also fuels the love for it too, though, right? Like, you don't
Oh
want to
yeah. It
get
keeps you
stagnant.
interested.
Exactly. You don't want to be stagnant, and that works for some guys, and that's cool. But like for me,
Hmm.
I just like trying different stuff.
Yeah.
If a vein is gonna tighten up my group at 50 yards by half an inch, like that's huge for me, man. Like I'm all for that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And then there's also the guys that are like, I want to put it away, and then when I take it out, I want it to be exactly the same
just that,
and
just
perform the same way, right?
pick it up and shoot it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you tune
I'm
that
kind
thing?
of,
Tune it? What do you
yeah,
mean tune it?
yeah. I'm kind of leaning towards just leaving my setup the way that I had it last year and running
Yeah.
that back.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like the bow shoots better than I do, and
Right.
so I want to try and bring up my ability instead of worrying about
Yeah.
what I need to change.
That's a good point. Uh, I'll intercede. What do you shoot? I know you have two bows, but what are you
Yeah.
gonna shoot this year?
I've got the Hoyt RX-7 in the 30-inch axle to axle,
Right.
and I've got a IQ Retina Lock 7-pin fixed sight on
Okay.
it. And I've always shot the fixed sight with lots of pins. I used to shoot 5 pins. I really like the 7 because it gives me that extra distance.
Mm-hmm.
I tried the whole adjustable sight thing. I bought a dialed Arxos a couple years ago,
Okay.
and that was what I had originally put on that RX-7. It wasn't what I wanted. I shot it
Yeah.
for a fall. I took it elk hunting. I killed one deer with it, and I did dial, so I did use the dialing portion of
Mm-hmm.
it. And this is the first time I ever used a dialed sight, not dialed brand, but like
Yeah.
dialing
Yeah.
range
Yeah.
type sight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with the elk thing, I found like it was too much going on. Like in a situation where it's like, okay, the elk are there, you don't have
Yeah.
much time to get a range on them, and then once you do, then you have to go and adjust your sight. You're shifting focus
Yeah.
back and forth too much, and I just figured I'd go back to using the simplicity of the 7 pins because I already know where all of them are and I know how to
Yeah.
compensate in between, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
see that
that,
point huge. Like I kind of fought with that myself too, and it was like the only reason I went with the like with the ability to change my range is like if I could buy one sight to do it all, like if I'm
mhm,
stalking a mule deer and I know I got that time, I'd love to be able to dial it to 80 and just,
Yeah.
and right? But I can see, because I really fought with it. I'm like, man, you're chasing a bull, and maybe that window's 40, and then that window's gone. And now your next setup you get on him, he comes in at 10. Maybe the next one's 50. And if you're only rocking 2 pins, well, you're 20, 30.
Yeah.
And then you're like, did I dial it? Did I not dial it? It is easy, I think, to forget, but then that comes down to what you said too, getting to know your equipment and being a better shooter. I think I would have to hold myself accountable, literally, and shoot my bow and know the sight. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just sight it in and then go hunt and expect it to be flawless, because you're just not used to how it works, right? So
I've also tried the thing too where on a 5-pin sight, because typically 5 pins you're getting 20 through 60 yards, where I wanted to get a little bit extra out of it. So my first pin, I sighted it in for 25 and then went to 40, because with my setup at 70 pounds and a 30-inch draw, I found that at 20 yards I was about 2 inches high, at 30 yards I was 2 inches low, and so 25 was a good
right
in
in the
between,
middle.
and the difference was negligible, right?
Yeah.
But then having shot and been so used to 20, 30, 40, now
Yeah.
removing the 30-yard pin, sometimes you play those mental mind games.
Yeah.
And even like when I had the dial sight, I found that once I had it dialed to my range, I'm double, triple, quadruple checking
Always
it before
looking
I
at
even
it,
do it.
looking at
Oh
it,
yeah,
looking at it.
and then it's you're paying too much attention to that instead of the situation, and I feel like that kind of takes away from your ability to be effective.
Yeah, I can see that side of it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I I was gonna go the 2-pin spot hog there, but I went 3, and I felt good about that, because even if I do, I might take your advice and even see how the bow shoots and maybe split it to 25 maybe. But 20, 30, 40, while a deer in a stand, you don't set yourself up for a 40-yard shot anyways. You want them primarily 20 or under if you can. Mule deer, like, chances of getting that close to a mule deer is pretty tough. So you have that ability to dial, so it's not like you need those 3 pins. And elk, I figured 20, 30, 40. I figured like 40 is a pretty long shot, man, on an elk in
Oh yeah.
in that bush, right? Like, there's a lot of crap in your way, and I had crap in my way this year at 20 yards. So, and that's why I settled on that. I'm actually thinking, like, I'm gonna set up my other bow, and I'm gonna put a little bit of TLC into it, and I'm gonna put a fixed 5 on it for a backup bow, and just have it so that you don't have to think about it. Just pick it up, it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, boom, done, and then just move on. So yeah, those are good
The
points.
sight, your new sight, that one you said is 3 pins.
Yeah, it's 3-pin.
So okay, that's one that I've actually been looking into. Is in their vertical, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do you find that the 3-pin housing is very heavy?
Yeah, this site's heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when I was holding
I've heard
the
that.
bow bare, I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, this thing feels unreal. And then I threw the sight on it, and it was like, bloop. I don't even need a stabilizer for anything. It was like right there. So yeah, like, there's weight to it for sure. But I mean, when you got I don't know if you can, yeah, you can kind of see there. But it's got the sliding, like the sliding dovetail, right? So I mean, I could bring it in. I like my sight far out from the bow. Correct me if I'm wrong. The further it is over distance, the tighter the pins are, I think, right? The further it is from you, the pin gap's tighter, I believe. It's been
That
a while
sounds
since
about
I
right.
thought
Yeah.
about that. But yeah, that makes sense, because if it's in your face, your gap's bigger. So then I can have my pin gaps a little tighter and whatnot. So yeah, man, we'll see. Like, we'll see if it's all the hype. We'll see if what I've been dreaming and drooling over for the last couple of years is gonna be worth it in the end, right? So
So do you do a lot of like setting up your own bow, working on your own bow? Is that something that you've always
yeah,
done, or
yeah.
more recently?
I kind of always done it. Like, I got into bow hunting, man. I'm old. 22 years ago is when I first got into it. I was working at Wholesale Sports, and I was like a clothing supervisor. I'm obsessed with camo. Used to be, not so much anymore. I've learned a lot more that the camo isn't as important. There's other factors,
Yeah.
but that's a rabbit hole of its own. But I've always been fascinated with bows, man. Like, my whole life. My dad, when when I was really young, he was shooting archery, and I love the vein fletching colors. I don't know, man, just been fascinated by it. So when I was at wholesale, that's when I really pushed to get into the archery department, and learned from Jerry Sizer, who's, I mean, up till now, I haven't met a lot of people that are really into it, but man, that dude knew stuff. He taught me how to time double cams and how to take a 70-pound bow and make it 80 pounds without ever changing anything except for, twisting cables, strings. And so I learned a lot of then, and I've always wanted to work on them. So like, I'll do the majority of my own stuff, but I mean, without a bow press, you can't do everything, right? That's the unfortunate part. Like, if the cams are ever to come out of time, like, I got to go to a bow press. And which I got a buddy like Engel, he's got a bow press, so I'll rip out to his place, and
Nice.
we'll tinker for a few hours. So yeah, it's just rewarding. I like it. I like being able to fix your own problems if you can, and having that ability to do it. Crap happens. What if your string on your drop away? What if you cut it and you're in the bush? You got to know how to fix it. Like, you're not going to throw your hunt away, right? So
no, that's a very good point.
yeah.
We're going to probably talk about things here from last year a little bit out of order, but
Yeah,
you mentioned angle.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Buzz story
Ooh,
a little bit.
oh man, yeah, that's a good one.
And Buzz was a whitetail buck
Yeah.
that you had an encounter with and
Yes,
some
sir.
trail camera history with just this year, because it's a
Yeah.
new spot.
Yeah,
And then your buddy Angle came out with you. You convinced
Yeah.
him to come out with you
Yeah.
after begging him to do
dude,
it.
like 10 years I've been just hounding him. Just come on, man, let's go, let's
Right.
go. And
And it was your second trip out together, and he connected on this buck, right?
yeah, second sit, last day, last
So-
day of season.
Yeah, and that's so cool, man. Like, you always
Yeah.
hear the stories of it. They got him on the last day. It was the last day, and you're like, was it really though? And this really
Yeah.
was the last day.
Legit, last day.
And I remember talking to you, and you're like, man, I don't know. I think I'm at peace with the season being over. Like, there
Yeah.
was a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and a
Oh,
lot
dude.
of learning experiences. And then you're
Yeah.
like, but I still want to go out maybe just for that
Yeah.
last day, just to see what happens. And I
Gotta
bet
go.
you're glad that you did.
Dude, like, yeah, no, I mean, and if anybody, like, if we have, mutual listeners, then you listen to the story of Buzz. But yeah, I didn't make a great shot on that deer, so I was pretty down in the dumps too. Like, I don't know how far back we want to go with it, but I mean, up to that point when I grunt, or no, I didn't, I bleeded him in. But when I called him in to me, dude, it happened so fast, and it was like, I'll give you a little backstory, even to, I guess, maybe to myself. Like, I've never been, some people are like, they're just killers, like, they're good hunters, but they're killers. Like, they're killers before they're anything else. And I was always the opposite of that. I love the chase. I love learning. When I see a buck grunt, if I get to witness it, I pay attention to what he looked at, what he was walking around, what was with cover. Like, I just love that part of it. I love the chase. I love scouting. And this year I was like, I just wanted to change that in my mind, because when I had that mindset, I passed a lot of deer. I passed a lot of everything. And, and I'm okay with that. But at the same time, it was like, no, I think it's time, like, to push myself just a little differently. And that's what I set out with this property. It was like, I'm killing a buck this year. Like, I'm doing it. Like, as long as everything happens, I'm not passing. Like, I basically said, if he's not mature, so mature to me in Alberta, mature to me is, people are going to disagree, whichever, but like 4 ideally, right? I mean,
Sure. Yep.
a 3.5-year-old deer, man, a lot of them don't even survive past that. So I mean, that could even be a mature deer to some regards.
And I find
like-
that, like, killing a 4.5-year-old deer is actually a lot harder than killing a 3.5-year-old deer.
Big time. It's a totally different ball game. Like,
There is the part of it where they just don't get to that age because of the
Yeah.
hunting pressure, but then there's also the part of it that at 4.5, it seems like that buck has a lot more smarts than he did the year before.
Yeah, that knowledge that they gained, especially maybe if you hunted them the year before, or pressure or whatever, right? Yeah, so that was like, that was my goal I had set in my head. And Like we talked a lot. I'm very vocal. I don't mind. I love sharing things. I love rebounding things off of people. I like getting different insight. So I was just worked up to a level where I was like, you know what, I got to get this done. And that was the coldest. I think that was one of the coldest days. I think we were texting. I'm like, dude, I don't even know if we should go out. I don't even know if I'm gonna go out. Like I don't even I don't have boots for this. Like I'm just a normal dude. I don't get stuff given to me. Like I don't think I can sit in my tree stand that long. And
Yeah.
that was the day I sat. That was the first day Ingle came out. Um, and the primary reason I actually wanted him to come out because there was a big 7x4, which I ended up showing you. That deer had my attention, and I was kind of like dead set on it. Like I want somebody's got to kill this deer. Like I know he's in here, and I know he's pushing these does. So I was like, Ingle, like if you sit up here with your rifle and I do my tree stand thing, like we just increase the odds of seeing this deer and getting a crack at him, and that was the whole focus. So yeah, so that's why he was out there that day. I think that's why he came out because he's seen that deer and he's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, I would shoot him, right?
Cherry pick a little bit.
Yeah, I just kind of fed him the carrot a little bit. But yeah, leading up to that, dude, that whole morning, the whole sit for me was super quiet. Engel was blowing up my phone. He saw, what was it, 4 or 5 out of the 7 shooters that I've had on camera. You saw them all.
That's quite a few. Yeah.
Like,
But then okay, but to preface that a little bit, he was
sure,
sitting in a quantity over quality situation.
absolutely, yeah,
And you were sitting in the intimate bow hunter setting where it was more of a
exactly.
quality opportunity over quantity.
Yeah, much different scenario, which is why I wanted that. Like I wanted him to have that ability to touch out 300 yards, where me, I'm 30 yards radius.
You're looking for that
Like,
National Geographic moment.
yeah, I'm looking for
Yeah.
that perfect YouTube clip. Like
Sure.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm after, right? So, yeah. So leading up to Buzz, like, um, it was so dry for me, man. He was texting me. I was getting frustrated, but I was happy at the same time. But I'm kind of like, pull the trigger already. Like, let's go. Like you've seen 5 out of 7 of these shooters already. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen a deer yet, and we're only 300 yards away from each other. I haven't even seen a deer yet.
Yeah.
But then, yeah. So the doe came through. She was acting weird. I could tell that something was behind her. Like you could tell she was coming into estrus or in estrus, and she was just edgy. And she came through. She came right to me. And on her way to me, I actually tried something out of pocket. I bleeded to her, but not to her. It's kind of like one of those, like, I used her as a live decoy, but I bleeded, hoping that a buck was somewhere cruising and hear it, maybe pick up the smell, follow her in, and kind of come to me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it, man. She picked her head up and she came to me. It was wild. So then she came, she passed me. She got behind my tree. I thought she was gone. And then she busted me. Because it was cold, man. It was antsy. I wanted to look. I wanted to see where she was. And then she caught movement. She flagged up and just trotted away. And I don't know, I was kind of like deflated. I don't know. I was just kind of bummed out. And then I turned and I just see these dark antlers coming through. And I was like, holy crap. Okay, this is going to happen. So I bleated to him. I was like, if it worked on her, it's going to work on him. Like, it's got to. And he just heard it, dude. He caught her smell. He came right down. I for sure thought it was a slam dunk. I was so rock solid. Everything was like perfect. Like nothing felt bad. I didn't pull the shot. Everything felt so good. And then it didn't.
Yeah.
It's like I could see the arrow flight. It was like I could remember, dude. I would still swear to you this day that I watched the arrow pass through him. But it just, yeah, so everything sunk right there. So we talked about it. We talked about Buzz on my pod there, but we looked for him. Didn't find any blood, chunk of fat. My veins were off of my arrow. Just couldn't wrap my head around what happened. So we looked for 2 hours. We followed trails. There was just nothing. So I was pretty bummed.
That's bow hunting though too, right?
It is.
And I like this part of it because a lot of guys try to ignore the fact that this stuff happens.
It
and
happens,
that
man.
there are situations where you make a poor shot, and sometimes it's because of you, sometimes it's just the situation and you don't understand why. And like you said, you felt rock solid.
Oh, dude, everything felt so good.
Arrow didn't go where you envisioned the arrow to go, and that's, like I said, it's just bow hunting sometimes.
It happens,
and
yeah.
and then it wasn't long after that you got a little glimmer of hope, and he
Yeah.
showed up again on trail camera.
Well, that's, I see, and I love this because I know you're a faith guy and I'm a faith guy, and I was not really tossing and turning, but I was laying in bed, man, and I don't like injuring animals. When I was young, I made some silly shots on some deer, and I get sick to my stomach, dude. I hate it. I just don't think I hate it. I don't like it. So I was laying in bed and I was just kind of like, Lord, man, you know, just looking for some closure here. It's not that I'm like savvy and greedy and I need this deer. I just want to know he's alive. Like
Yeah.
I don't want him piled up dead somewhere, and I'm gonna find his skull the next time I go out, hanging a new set or something. And sure enough, the next day, trail cam goes off. WiseEye goes off. I get this, and I'm looking, and it was just like, no way,
Yeah.
it's freaking him.
Yeah.
He's alive. Because I saw
Yep.
I saw this rough hair patch, and I was like, that was at that time with the theory we came up with. It was like, that's him. And then man, I was jacked. So then I made a joke to Engel. I was like, hey, last day of the season, man, wouldn't it be incredible if I could shoot him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he came out. I know I'm missing some things. We joked around with nicknames for him, and he got his name Buzz because you said Buzz
Yeah.
Lightyear.
Well,
Or
and you
Buzz
gave him a
next
little
year.
a buzz
Yeah.
next year because I said you
Buzz
give him a
next
buzz
year.
cut, and then next year
Yeah.
you'll get him.
So his
And
name was Buzz, and
yeah,
yeah, man. So that's how it unfolded, and you know what? I just want to touch too. Like hindsight's always 2020. You don't see, it's life. You don't see things until you're past it, so you can
yes,
actually reflect back on it. And it was actually when Engel came out there, and I was taking my tree stand down, and I climbed up in there, and I was reminiscing of the shot. Just remember, just kind of just taking it in. And as I looked, dude, I'm looking at where where I shot at him, and then I looked at Engel, and I was like, I should have never taken that shot. He's like,
really.
he's like, really? I said, dude, I can't even find the hole that I saw. I don't even know what I saw.
Is it
I
one
said,
of those things where like it's closer to last light, and there's a couple of branches that almost go invisible?
it was like 1:30 in the afternoon, though. I
Oh,
think I was just so zoned in on this deer, and then I
yeah,
was like, and I remember like I seen him, and I wanted him to stop at the one opening, which was a good opening, that I kind of pre-cut for the most part. And then I looked ahead, and I was like, no, I can hit him there. And then I stopped him. I gave him a quick little grunt, and he stopped and let it go. And like I said, so everything felt good, but there was, yeah, tiny little poplar limbs, just little tiny suckers, and clearly, even though my pin's in the opening on him, everybody and I forget too, man, that arrow flight's not where your pins are, right?
no, it's not straight like a bullet, and even bullets
So
aren't straight.
exactly, everything curves, and
Yeah.
so it was a good lesson for me too. I was like, you know what, now I got to pay more attention. I got to cut more lanes out. I got to be
So
more aware.
do you feel like in that moment that you kind of got ahead of yourself and like you rushed the
Well,
situation?
big time hindsight now. I was so
Yeah.
savvy on killing that deer that I didn't process it. I was just like, no, I'm doing this. I can't pass this deer. I'm not passing this deer, right? Like,
Hmm.
not because he was a giant. It was just he was a good solid deer, and it's like I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to shoot this deer.
Hmm.
So
Well,
yeah, I definitely rushed it.
I remember too when you finally got another video of him after the mishap,
Yeah,
and the first reaction was like, "He's alive!" Like, thank
yeah.
goodness he's still alive. And then the next thought was like, "He's actually a pretty nice buck," you know,
He's a lot better than I thought he was.
right?
Exactly.
And I like that because you go into the initial opportunity on him, and you're hunting him based on a mature deer, right? And
Yep.
most hunters, I feel like they look at an animal and you know right away, you're like, yeah, that's the one. That one makes
Yeah.
the cut.
Yeah.
And that's without analyzing antler size. You kind of get a generalized feeling.
Yeah.
And I like that because I'm not an inch hunter.
Right.
I feel like if the animal makes you excited, get it done. You know
Just
what
do
I
it.
mean?
100%.
Exactly. And I feel like getting into score, a lot of times it ruins hunting. And that goes
so, too.
for, I think, every animal.
Yep.
And I'll say the same thing happened for me this year. The whitetail buck that I shot, I knew it was a nice buck, and he was out doing what nice bucks shouldn't be doing, but they
Right.
do it that one time in November.
Yeah.
and I happened to be there when he was, and I
Exactly.
was like, I'm not passing up on
I'm
this.
taking this deer, right? Yeah.
Right. And looking
Yeah.
back at it, I have zero regrets for pulling the
No, man.
trigger
That's a heck of a
because
deer.
exactly, because
Great
I
deer.
know how few of opportunities I had leading up to that moment.
Yeah.
And it likely would have been the same thing going forward had I passed on him.
Yeah. Or yeah, you might not have even had an opportunity from that point on. Like we don't
Yeah.
we're not prophets here. We can't tell our future and say if I pass him I know that I'll take another deer or have that opportunity. You just don't know, man. Deer do what deer do. And then they do it and then they don't do it and then we're all scratching our heads going, I don't get it.
Yep.
Right?
I know. So fast forward, I guess,
Yeah.
to the last day of season.
Last day, yeah.
You guys decide to tough it out, go out for a
Yeah.
cold sit.
And it was cold
And-
again. Sucker was that
And
cold.
lucky for you guys, you didn't have to sit too terribly long.
No, it was still pretty good. Like it was a good 4 hours. Like we didn't tell each other, but if either one of us would have said, "Hey, we had a good run," we would have mutually left. But it was kind of like we're both sitting there waiting for the phone to buzz, going, "Are you going to call it or am I going to call it?" And because it wasn't too exciting for me, I had a little buck come in, but he was young, and yeah, same thing. You know, a young deer, it's not always antlers. It's not that every 5-year-old deer is going to be a 160. A 5-year-old might only be a 120, but you can tell by body, you can tell by their face, you can tell by just observing them. And he was a young buck, and I had a slight window, but I let him go, and then it was more busy for me, but it was none of the shooters, nothing in range. And then I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden I just hear the boom, the pop. And, dude, I've never texted so fast. It was like, "What'd you shoot?" And he's like, "I don't know. He looked good. He looked good." And I was like, "Okay, I'm coming to you." And man, And then I just hopped out of the tree and met him up on the trail. And still, he's like, "I didn't go look at him. I wanted to wait for you. I wanted to walk up to him with you."
Oh,
And
that's so awesome.
yeah, it was pretty. I respected that a lot. That was pretty exciting. So we're walking out, both just excited, man. And he tells me, three does come or 2 does come out, and then there's 2 fawns, and then all of a sudden you just heard this buck just grunting away behind him the whole way. Just he was super vocal. Stepped out. He didn't even look at him. Just saw that he was a good frame and dark, and hammered him. So it was like, right on, man. Like this is awesome. It's for Ingle to shoot. It's going to be one of those 7 deer, you could say. And yeah, man, I still don't think I'd ever put words into it. I just remember walking up to the deer and we're looking at him, and it's like, no, it's a pretty good buck, man. Like last day, like absolutely. And then it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, we got to pull him out of the grass. He's like, what? I was like, get him out, roll him over. And then his face dropped. He's like, Buzz? Rolled him over, dude, and there's the wound and right behind the last rib. And it was just like, holy crap, dude, you just shot Buzz. Like, what? What are the chances of this?
Just wrote the end of that story.
Like, it was so, I sat there in awe for a long time. He was pretty speechless too. He's like, you can't make this stuff up.
Right. Of all the, like you said, 7 different deer that would be considered a shooter.
Yeah. And one that I stuck an arrow in.
Yeah.
Right? That made a bad shot on. And he's the guy that's out pushing the does around. It was like, what the heck's going on? Yeah. It was,
so then looking at the, I guess the arrow wound, do you feel like that buck would have survived the winter? And like, what kind of winter we've had.
No.
It's been
I don't
harsh.
think he would have. I don't think he would have. Like, I sent you pictures. I think I might have posted them on Instagram too, but man, that pus pocket, dude, there's a pus pocket bigger than a soccer ball, just pure yellow pus. Like,
and I feel like too, like watching them run around during the rut, that's not a fair assessment of how the deer is actually doing, because his mind is somewhere totally else. Like he could be missing 2 legs and he's still going to be running after does.
oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
He'll drag himself chasing does. Like
and then once the rut winds down, I feel like everything comes back down to earth, and that's when the deer would be faced with this, oh man, I got this lingering injury, this pain.
I'm gonna go lay down now.
Infection, and then he goes to lay down and never gets up again.
Exactly, or the coyotes get him, right? And there's Probably coyotes would get him. Would be my guess, right? But like, yeah, I don't think he would have lived because basically, well, what ended up happening was obviously the arrow hit a limb and it went straight down. And when it hit it, it opened up the mechanicals. So now I got these 2-inch blades wide open, hitting them just blunt force. So there's really no energy even. Like the arrow's dead of energy, basically.
It kills your penetration.
Yeah. So it's just like it hit high and went straight down and rode into the skin. And then after we were quartering them out and stuff, then we saw just the chisel poked through in the back, right in the back rib. So I mean, there's an open wound. He's full of pus. He would have never lived, I don't think.
Huh. Well, that makes it even sweeter that you guys were able to put him down there.
Yeah, it was unreal. I mean, you remember that one forever.
Absolutely, and I would say looking back at your season, that was probably like the highlight moment of the entire season.
Yeah, man, there was a lot of downs. So that was I was pretty fired up. Like that was exciting. I think I was more excited, but I think I still would have been more excited that he shot him than if I would have got the opportunity. Yeah. It was just defied the odds, man. The dude, he came out of an area that they've never come out of, and it's just, yeah, man.
Just whitetails doing whitetail things during the rut.
Just can't make it up, you know, and yeah, it was special, very special.
If you're a flavor fanatic, you need this seasoning in your life. Get ready for a taste explosion. Meet the Peak Blend from Man Mountain Company. This isn't just any seasoning. It's the ultimate flavor booster for every dish. Imagine your beef, pork, chicken, or fish bursting with incredible taste. But wait, there's more. Peak Blend is perfect for veggies, eggs, popcorn, fries, and even wild game. It's like having a magic wand in your kitchen. Whether you're grilling, smoking, or just whipping up a quick meal, Peak Blend turns ordinary into extraordinary. Think about it. Every bite, an adventure in flavor. So why settle for bland when you can have the best? Head over to manmountainco.com and order your Peak Blend today. Your taste buds will thank you. Remember, with Peak Blend, every meal is a masterpiece. Don't miss out. Get yours now.
Now you are going to get yourself a rifle.
Yes, sir.
You're a devoted bow hunter, have been for a long time. I know we've talked about it a little bit, and you've had rifles and firearms in the past and used them for hunting and gotten away from it. And now after getting buzz and the way that the season shook down, you're going to get back into that. What was
a little bit.
What was the turning point that made you want to get back into rifle hunting?
The long and the short of it is my bonus boy was chowing down on some buzz steaks and I was teasing him because he's not the outdoorsy type of kid. Like he's so smart. He's got such an intelligent mind. He's tech savvy, man. He could be the furthest thing from outdoors. All right. If he grabs a stick, I'm impressed. And I'm not insulting him. It's just that's how he's made.
Different personalities.
Yeah. Like, and there's nothing wrong with it. I love it. I love him. But I remember teasing him and I said, hey, you shoot your own deer next year, you can eat as many steaks as you want, buddy.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he just goes, okay, like typical teenager. Okay. He's like, really? Don't play me, dude. And my wife's like, don't do this to him. If you're joking, don't do this to him. You'll tear his heart out, right? And he's like, well, can I shoot it with a gun? It's like, dude, you can shoot it with whatever you want. Yeah. You name it. We'll make it happen. So that's what sparked that. I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time I jump down there and go share that with him. See what he thinks of it. And I mean, at the end of the day, like being a bow hunter is probably the most fun. Intimate's the best way to hunt, but
I agree.
You don't fill the freezer all the time that way. So
no, there's a lot of skunked bow hunts that a person goes on.
And it's not that a rifle is a guarantee, but if I take all my bow hunting scenarios that maybe I couldn't have gotten an arrow off, the boomstick would have barked and I'd be taking something home, right? So it's like, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time.
So then do you feel like this season going ahead, are you going to try and get yourself behind the rifle, or is it going to be more so just being there with him and trying to get him something?
No, I'm going to. it's still very fresh, but my dad and I are probably gonna do a southern Alberta mule deer hunt and just go do the father son thing. It's been, oh man, it's been too long. Like the last time him and I hunted together, I bet you was almost emotional about it 20 years ago. Like
Wow.
long time, right? Like we all share the
Yeah.
passion, but just connecting those dots together, it's never worked. And so then I had this thought, and I was like, man, if I'm gonna have a gun,
Mm-hmm.
I got in November mule deer. So I was like, hey dad, are you putting in for mule deer this year? He's like, yep. It's like, you want to do a father son duo? You want to throw it back and go trek the hills and see what we can turn up? And he was all for it. So I will take the gun out on that for sure. And then outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's going to be the kid. Um, I teased him because he asked me, he goes, so like, what if I see the deer and like, I kind of get emotional. I don't want to shoot it. I was like, dude, it's totally fine. I'm not going to insult
Mm-hmm.
you. I'm not going to call you names. My wife goes, if it's big, I said, I'm going to push you over and grab the gun and shoot it, but I'm not going to make fun of
Yeah,
you. And he goes,
that's great.
oh, okay, right. So I'd like to put some time into them for sure. Like my wife is intrigued in it too. And man, I don't know what husband, father, what more do you want than to have your kids or your wife want to come and just
Mm-hmm.
experience what you obsess over for so long, just to
Yeah,
maybe get a
sharing that
glimpse of
moment.
it, right? And share that together. So I'm going to put a lot of focus into them, and if I haven't shot a whitetail by then and something happens, then I mean I'm not going to be afraid to pull the trigger. I'm not going to be too prideful not to shoot it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
No, that's really good because I feel like a lot of, and I could just be speaking for myself, but I feel like this resonates with other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my favorite hunting moments and memories have come from the people that have been there for the hunt
Yeah,
and sharing that with somebody else and being able to reflect and reminisce over and over again with those people and be like, yeah, you remember
excuse me.
that time? You remember what happened
Yeah,
that
you remember?
when that buck walked out, and you remember
Yeah,
how that just like the
yeah.
little things,
Or the stupid things, right? The
Exactly,
funny things that
exactly.
you would have never experienced if you didn't go do it.
Oh man, with my
Like,
brother, I so many memories where
yeah,
just like you can't even believe it. Like you
yeah,
couldn't have
yeah,
written it up, and
yeah.
it
I
happens,
bet. I
and
bet.
and sometimes not even like an animal encounter or an
No,
animal on the
but
ground, and it's but we still we cut up and
oh,
throw
dude,
back to those moments all the time,
100%. I agree.
right?
And those I think that's the most important, right? Like at the end of the day, if you could measure it and weigh it, I think that's the most important stuff is sharing
Yeah.
that. And I love hunting solo, dude. I love it. But like, not to be a baby, but to even have Ingle out there and experience that with him, it was such a different level. It was like
Hmm.
to have somebody there and partake in it all. Like it's so much different than getting home and talking about it.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
get to experience that, right? It's intimate, honestly. It's just yeah, it's great.
Well, the other part of it too is that you're now, um, I guess the best word to use would be stewardship because you're
Yeah,
bringing somebody that has a little bit of exposure to hunting. Hunting is, by and large, dying as a
yeah, it
hobby
is.
and a
It really
sport
is.
and
Yep.
an interest, especially in younger people.
Yeah.
And you've piqued a younger person's interest, and now you have the opportunity to bring him out there and try and see if maybe that's something that he can push
Absolutely.
onto his kids someday.
Well, even if he doesn't want to ever do it again, he knows how.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, let's just say
It's
push comes to shove. We can't foretell the future, but let's say push comes to shove, then he knows he could go buy a deer tag and bonus dad Brando's got a gun and
hmm
I can go out and kick it with him and shoot a deer and like there's so much knowledge, there's so many things you learn, so many things you experience.
Oh yeah.
It's I think everybody should experience it. Everybody should do it. They should at least
I
try
agree.
it, right? Like,
Especially the people that are opposed to it.
yeah, more than
Right.
anybody. More than
I
anybody.
man, I think so much about it. Like, and I get the comments all the time, and from from this is dumb all the way to
Yeah.
death threats, right? Like
Oh.
that's just a common thing. But
Yeah.
it's like you get this idea of what an animal is and how an animal is from what Hollywood has told you, essentially.
Exactly. They create
Like,
this. They create this story,
bears aren't cute and
that it's
cuddly.
good versus evil.
Exactly. Right?
No, it's
Bears
not.
aren't. You're not gonna go up and give it a hug, and it's not gonna.
No.
You don't walk out into the bush and just put your arms out, and the birds all land on you.
Yeah.
Like that's not
Yeah,
that's not how that
exactly.
works, right?
Yeah.
But I also feel like I have a lot more knowledge than a person that doesn't have an interest in it, because I'm out there and I'm seeing it, and all of us are like that.
It's just, maybe you could agree with this. It fills your soul, man.
Yes. Yes.
Like it fills your cup up. You like when I go out and I come home, even when I'm out there, nothing matters, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been broke, almost homeless, and put me in that tree stand and forget about everything.
It all goes
And
away.
you just take it in, man.
I've always said that like hunting means so much to me. It's above all, I think it's an escape for me, and I can get away from the stresses of life, the workplace drama, the hustle and bustle, and the nonstop. Like it's just, you get out there and it's like you can breathe.
Everything comes
Right?
down. Everything comes
and
down.
then you get that elk bugles back at you, and you're just like, oh man, you
Yeah.
can't experience
That's
that
like,
or anything like that feeling anywhere else. And that, to me, that's just like, even the other day I went shed hunting. I went and walked around for a couple of hours, covered a few miles, and it's just like you said, it's cleansing. You get out there and you get back in touch with nature. And I feel like a lot of people aren't in touch with nature. And I'm not saying like you have to,
No.
like, it doesn't have to mean something super, I guess spiritual is the word, but like you're out there and it's the purest form of existence, I feel.
Well,
And so it means a lot to me, and I look at it as an escape from the real world, and I can get out there and you can kind of get to know yourself even a little bit better.
oh, dude, the things and the
and then
conversations with myself and talking to the Lord, and then you just sit there and you're just like, wow, I'm a fool, man. And but you can come to such a beautiful place where it's like, there's healing out there too, right? Like, yeah, you made a point, but it's our roots. Everybody came from it. It didn't mean everybody was a hunter, but everybody came from nature. Everybody came from that. Like, we didn't have all these fancy houses till 150 years ago. That's it.
And another thing that I really appreciate about it too is you get all these people that are against hunting, and they don't like that you're out there shooting the animal, but they're still okay with going down to the fast food joint and ordering a burger or ordering some
Big time.
chicken strips or whatever it is, and they have no idea what that animal went through at the slaughterhouse. But I happen to know exactly how all of these animals died. And I know how they taste, and I know if I make a poor shot and I recover that animal, that's something that I'm reminded of every time I cook a steak. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really appreciative about this.
Absolutely.
But I know exactly what I need to do to be better next time.
Right. Yeah, man.
Right?
Well
So
said.
much
Well
so
said.
much learning that goes into it. And the more you're out there, the better you get at it, the more you
100%.
experience, and it's like the gift that keeps on giving.
It is. And it's how much you put in is how much you get out. It's not even like an uneven scale. If you put in a ton, you're gonna get a ton out.
Yes.
Like it's like an everlasting well. You put your bucket in, put more buckets in, get a bigger bucket. You're gonna get more water,
exactly.
right? Like you're gonna get more and more.
And I didn't intend this, but I love how this is going to segue into this part.
Okay.
But it is also extremely humbling.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
now we're going to dial it back
Okay.
a couple months from Buzz
Sure.
to the elk
Oh,
woods.
to to the torture, to torture
to the
days.
torture, right?
Oh,
And it'll sometimes,
wanna
man,
think
it
about
feels it feels like it'll bring you to your knees.
oh, dude, yeah,
And you and Tyler chased elk aggressively
yeah,
for a while,
10 days, yeah,
and I was chasing elk at the same time.
yeah.
It was a tough year, and
It was a weird year. Like
yeah,
it felt a week off. That's what it
yes,
felt like. It's what it
yeah, I
seemed
agree
like.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether that's just how our calendar dates lined up to how the moon and all, all those things were, it seemed like everything was a week behind.
So looking back at it now, and you did everything that you thought you needed to do to hunt elk successfully.
Mm-hmm.
Came out of it unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like you almost learned how not to hunt elk?
I could write a book about that.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I made a joke with Engel. I was like, man, I'm not gonna say say who it was, but it was just elk seminars, and it's like, man, everybody's doing an elk seminar now. I was like, I should do an elk seminar. He's like, what would you do an elk seminar on? And I was like, how not to hunt them,
Sure.
because you're gonna learn a ton from that.
Yeah, you know what? That's universal too, because it's like majority of your hunting is learning how not to hunt something.
100%.
Right.
That's
If you knew how to hunt something perfectly, you would shoot
don't have to
something the
learn.
first time you
You
go
would-
out. Every
yeah.
time.
every
Right.
time. Yeah, exactly.
But in elk, it seems like no matter what, you can have the book on them, but they always teach you a new little lesson.
They always have that blank page or that page that you skipped over. You're like, darn, like, yeah, man, they're always a page ahead of you. Always. Like, well, I mean, until you kill one, of course. But I mean,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, dude, I don't even know. Like, I reflect on last year's hunt a lot. Like, elk drive me crazy. I love it. I've loved it my whole life. And it's awesome that I'm hunting. It sucks. It's bittersweet. It sucks that it took this long to really get this hard into them. But at the same time, I appreciate it too, a lot more too. But, yeah, I think about all the wrongs more than even the right things that we did, because the right things that you do almost just become habitual. You don't need to relearn them. You've already got them.
That's
right.
true.
So you
Yeah.
think about the stuff that you maybe made a mistake on, or I have one in my mind. I've mentioned it to Tyler briefly just through messages and stuff, but there's one that I really think hard about. And it was just a lack of effort. We're on day, whatever that was, 9. Tired, man. Like, yeah, but like for anybody listening, like we were to the point of desperation that we weren't even sleeping much. We were driving,
you guys were really
bugling
giving it.
at night. It was like we were so determined to find that one bull that actually just wanted to talk. Because if they don't talk and you're in bush and you don't have that farmland to potentially pattern them, you need them to talk. They have to talk. At
They
least
have to
they
tell
got to
you where
bugle
they
once, even once. You got to at least know where he's hiding, right? And that was our biggest challenge, was finding a bull to talk. I mean, we did, like, in hindsight too, right? Like those 10 days felt really long. But then I think about it too, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4 encounters with bulls bugling. I mean, 4 encounters over 9 days isn't terrible. 10 days, like, that's actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
It's just they just weren't fired up enough to keep the engagement going, right? So, but yeah, I don't know. Keep going. I don't know where you if you have a direction you want to go with it.
No, I just, like, I'm curious, because you go into a season, and I know I'm like this too, and most people are. You have this thought in your mind about, you know what, this is what I did last year. I'm going to change that up a little bit and try and take this approach when I go into that situation that I messed up on last time.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't work again. And you're like, well, what did I do wrong again? You know?
Right.
And so, like, you guys had a couple of situations where you found bulls that wanted to talk, and then you got aggressive. And this is something, I guess, if people don't know you love to call aggressively.
Yeah. And every deer, elk,
right?
moose. I want you to come. I want you to come fight me. That's what I want every time.
If you could learn how to call gophers, you'd be running at them with that call. I know
Probably
that's
would.
exactly how you are.
Yeah, throw a lip ball in the end of a gopher whistle, and
Yeah. Right. And so you get these bulls and they're doing everything they're supposed to, and then you get right and tight and they stop.
yeah.
Right. And do you feel like that's because of you? It's because
I think so.
and
Yeah,
this is a
partially,
word that a lot of
partially.
people use is checking their temperature.
Yeah.
And do you feel like the temperature was off? Like, how do you look back at it now? Because you're planning for next season already. We all are.
Oh, dude, the day I left,
Right.
as I was wiping my tears, I was thinking about this year already. So
then how do you approach that now going forward? Like, what did you think was supposed to work that didn't, and how are you going to change it now?
you know, I don't know, how do you keep that in a short form? Like, I can maybe use it as advice, and it's just because it's my thought process. But like, so for me, like from last year, I look at every encounter or potential encounter, we'll just say, like where we hurt a bull. Maybe we actually didn't even get close enough to him, and we couldn't get there in time. But let's say we hurt a bull. I just break down everything that I did or we did. It's mainly me. Like I do the main calling, but Tyler jumps in there too. But just try to break it down and then and try to find that point where it stopped, right? Where it shifted, and then literally just analyze it and try to decide why. Temperature is a big one. I think I kind of had a little bit too much of that Corey Jacobson in me, where I'm going to get this bull fired up and he's just going to do it. He's going to do what I tell him to. And it took us too long, actually. It took us to like day 7, 8 to really kind of start figuring out that these bulls weren't where they were the year before. Like, it just didn't click for us. We just thought we weren't finding them. We just thought they're just not in our ABC spots, right? Or at least that's how I thought, right? I won't speak for my brother, but yeah, so I just been breaking them down, and I think temperature was a big one. The rut wasn't really fired up. But man, you know what? I'll go deep. I'll be honest. I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for my brother, but commitment. And it sounds crazy because we hunted so hard for 10 days, but I'm still going to say commitment. The commitment level was not enough. And what I mean by that is, I'll just give you an example. There was, well, I have it on my TikTok, and I think Tyler put it in his little edit. He did too, but we were walking out the one night. We walked in like 4 miles, had this great plan, right? We got a bull. He got a bull on trail camera, good, probably 300-ish bull, nice 6x6. So it's like, well, let's hover that area. Like he shouldn't be far by what the book says, right? He shouldn't be far. So it's like, we should just get in there and let's just work our way through it. And the plan was just to sound like elk, just casually walking through. So a bull bugle here and there, do some raking, maybe a couple cow calls, and just walk and walk and walk. And in the hopes of eventually something will respond or sneak in on us or something. So did that, dude, and it was just like nothing, man. 3 hours we worked our way in this loop, and then we come up to this creek ravine. I think you know where it is, but come up to this creek, and I had the mindset of, I'm just gonna let out this simple hoochie mama, just to hit the low spots in hopes that a bull might be coming out from water or coming out of a bed. And like 60 yards away, this freaking bull takes off like a freight train. He was breaking trees, dude. And I just looked at Tyler and I'm just like, really? So like, I guess, so there's a lesson in that. That whole time we were making all that noise, this bull was sitting there getting worked up, rubbing, and never made a single bugle. But he heard it all, and he was coming in to fight the bull that had the cows, because he had pine trees shredded, man. Like fresh, right there. He was getting ready to fight, and unbeknownst to us, because he never made a peep, we thought there was nothing around. And then this cow call 60 yards away, he's like, where'd you come? And he just took off. So we were pretty defeated. So it's like, well, so Tyler's like, well, I think if I remember right, he's like, let's just get out of here, man. We got a big walk back to the truck, and you know, tomorrow's a new day and we'll talk about it. And I was like, no, let's just chill for a bit. If I'm remembering how it went, I was just like, well, let's just hang out. Like, walking out in the dark or getting out at dark, it doesn't make a difference. Like,
Yeah.
you know, let's just see, like, maybe we didn't fully blow him out, and maybe he will talk tonight. You know, if he was that fired up, maybe he'll talk tonight. And the sickest bull, dude, it sounded like a hunter, and if it wasn't an hour past dark, I would have believed it was a hunter. It was a brutal bugle. Worst thing I've ever heard. But he starts off, and then another bull pipes up, another bull, and this whole area we thought there was no elk, 4 bulls are bugling. And well, there's that high moment. Now immediately, like, this is like day 8. And it's like, it's going to happen tomorrow morning. Like, it's go time. We know where you are now.
Yep.
So reflecting on all of that was fun and exciting. And then, but there was a moment I don't know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's some guys gatekeeping the spot. Rifle season's kicking in. I hate that time of transition. I think bow hunters get the crappy end of the stick.
These guys are hunters, though.
Yeah.
It's unnecessarily competitive, and is what it is. I guess.
Like, your season is not even open. What are you sitting here for, right? Like, why are you blocking that entrance? And we could talk about that another time. We can get into stuff like that, but we were a little defeated, and what I mean by commitment is like the elk told us where they were, and we could have drove many miles around and walked a massively deep ravine and come up the other top and been in their back door instead of taking the easy way in. And hindsight, when I say commitment, like, that's one thing that I'm going to set forward this year. If those moments where you listen to the voices in your head, those are the ones you got to kill. You just have to get rid of them.
Like,
and you have to go for it. Like, we should have tried, man. What's the worst that's going to happen? We're going to be tired.
Yeah.
And if we kill the bull over there, well, I don't care about those guys gatekeeping now. We're driving to the closest point to get this elk out, and we're going to pack them out and walk right past them. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So commitment, I think, is a big one, is being willing to do anything. And the best elk hunters say it. Dan Staton says it all the time. You know, he refers to it as, don't listen to the demons in your head. If you know that you should be going, then go. Like, go.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest tool that any person has, and it's not even a hunting specific thing, is in any facet in life, your greatest tool is your mind.
Oh, dude, absolutely.
Right? The minute you let doubt creep in is the minute that you accept failure.
Immediately.
Right?
Agreed.
And those thoughts are always knocking at the door. As soon as you open that door just a crack to take a peek, you let it in.
100%.
And so, like, I just feel like I remember just talking with you guys lots throughout the whole experience, because all of us,
a lot.
and it wasn't even just you guys. There's other guys I was talking to as well, and everybody was going through it. Right? It was like the elk just aren't cooperating, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the rut's on, and then all of a sudden that afternoon it's like the elk disappeared again.
Dead again.
You know?
Yeah.
And you guys covered miles upon miles.
Oh, dude.
Boots on the ground. And even more than how physically that beats you down, the mental game is just unreal, you know?
Yeah, the mental is the hardest part.
And then I also feel like you want to, every year I tell myself, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to be stronger about this mentally. I'm going to convince myself that, you know what, even though it's terrible, where there's light at the end of that tunnel, and we're going to push through until we get to that moment that we're seeking and striving for, right? Because in hunting anything, it always happens when you least expect it, right?
It's true.
And trying to convince yourself that you are right before that moment is the hard part. And
So hard.
right, and so like, how do you, I guess, try to convince yourself? Because you, like you said, by day 8, 9, 10, whatever it was, you're checked out and more or less just waiting for the rest of your hunt to come to an end.
Yeah, like, see, not even really checked out, man. Like, I was still fired up. If I could have stayed longer, I would have. It's just you hit a wall and then you just tend to forget everything you know,
Yeah,
right? Because you think like I've tried everything.
yeah. Every
We'll
trick in
try
the
we'll
book.
try it again.
Yeah,
It's a new day. It's a new
yeah.
hour. It's a new minute. It's everything's new. Like I take that, in my faith and in the Lord, like he says, don't worry about tomorrow, for today has enough trouble of its own. Well, stop thinking about the next day or that night or that afternoon. I think if you've done it 5 times, try 6 times. You know, and I think that's just the mental part, and then the pre-commitment, like, pun intended, hold yourself accountable. If you're gonna say you're gonna be different, be different. And then that's all I can speak of. I can't tell my brother to be different. He's got to make a choice. Dad's going to come this year. I can't tell him to be different, but I can be different. And hopefully, if that moment happens, they follow. If not, like that's my thing. I'm thinking about. I've thought about now is like, let's say I've got a hunch and I'm just dead set. This is what I'm doing. Like, you guys don't want to do it. I'm doing it. So I'm going to go do it, and you guys go do you. And that's not insulting, but like if they say, well, no, you shouldn't, and we should. No, I have to hold myself accountable and commit to it, and that's a hard decision because then you're facing your relationship with the people you're with, and
It
emotions
messes
get
with the team
high,
chemistry a
and then
little bit.
and it messes with things, right? But it's more like that mindset of just it's what I'm gonna do, and I have to see
Yeah.
it through.
No, I know. I've been there where we're sitting there and there's 3 of us or 4 of us, and one person thinks maybe we should go try this. Another person thinks, well,
Yeah.
maybe we should try this. And then another person's like, well, neither of those ideas are good ideas.
I don't
And
like any of
it's right. It's tough. And
Yeah, you call too much.
right. I know. And this reminds me of a bull that my brother arrowed a couple years ago. And we have a spot where we try to leave it alone because the elk like it, but it's not really that big that if you go in there and you mess around too much, they're out of there. And so going in, knowing that there's a talking bull, and then all of a sudden the wind swirls, we're like, time to get out of here. We gotta leave this alone. And then try and go back into it another day. And I remember the day that he killed his bull, we started edging into the spot. And I remember we got to a point where we'd creep a little closer. He's still talking. He's getting angrier. We got some of the other bulls fired up, and you can hear them and kind of see them moving through the trees. And then we're at a point where it's like, the wind could be iffy, but we're committed.
We're in it.
Right? You're like, it's either we're going to blow these elk out of here,
Yeah.
or we're going to kill a bull and blow these elk
Yeah.
out of here.
Yeah.
And we managed to get within 3 yards of where this bull walked out in front of my brother, and it just screamed like the most, like being that close probably added to it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
he let out a shriek, man, and I thought we were going to get run over.
Wow.
And here he comes plowing down this trail. It was so thick he couldn't shoot 5 yards. Good thing he was only 3 yards. and Ryan plowed this bull, and we ended up getting on top of him pretty quickly after he didn't make it very far.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those plays where it was like, I don't know if we should push forward. Well, maybe we shouldn't.
I know,
and there was 4 of us in the bush and 2 guys calling. I was behind the camera, and my brother had the bow in hand, and it happened, right? And it's like you have that doubt, and you're like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And you're like, but let's push forward a little bit further. And sure enough, at the end of the day, we got what we were searching out, and that was an incredible bull.
Well, yeah, man, and that's a good point, because elk specifically, whitetail are different. You blow a deer out, they might not come back for a week or more.
Yes.
But like elk, I mean, when you're chasing bugles, so to speak, who cares if you blow them out? Like that's what I'm getting to that point. Who cares if I blow them out?
Just move on to the next ones.
I'll go look for another one, and I'll come back to
Okay.
him in 2 days.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I know nobody else is going to be in there, I'll come back in 2 days. Or maybe we had a bugle fest and then he blew out. I know, as aggressive as I am, I'm a little timid at times too.
Which
You know?
I find is kind of interesting because I feel like there's a lot of situations in hunting where I've been too timid or too cautious, and I'm like, I should have just pushed forward a little bit. And when I'm in a situation where I'm not the one that's behind the weapon, I feel like I'm more gung ho about getting aggressive.
Right?
But as soon as it's me with the weapon, I'm just like, I don't know, I don't want to rush this, like I want this to be perfect.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that most of the times it's never a perfect situation.
No.
You talk about, and bow hunters especially, reading the script. Like the animals very rarely read the script. When they do, it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Right? But in elk hunting, that script is, it's improvised.
Yeah.
It doesn't
All the
happen
time.
that way.
Just because he lip balls back at you doesn't mean he's going to run you over.
Right. I think, and a lot of it too, like people don't understand the language of the elk, and you get into a situation where he makes a big, loud, scary noise, right? A big bugle, and you interpret it as "come and get me,"
Yeah.
when in reality it's "see you later,"
Yeah.
and he's rounding up his cows and he's
I'm
leaving.
out of here.
Yeah, and I find that's an interesting approach now, that where you say, if he takes off, let's just go find another one.
Yeah. But then your head gets in the way.
I don't see, and I don't know if that's my style of doing it.
Well, I know I'm not saying it's a style, but it's kind of like
A mentality.
I see both sides of it, but it's like it's just to get you, I think, to go the extra couple steps instead of just sitting back. It's kind of like,
What do you have to lose?
what do we have to lose if we do
Yeah.
blow them out? Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, we got a long ways out of here. But if you just sit back and sit there and debate about it and talk about it for an hour, you just wasted an hour.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
like I have this, call it a theory, I guess, but like let's say a bull is downwind from you. He's only downwind from you from where you are.
Yes.
So you can change your position. Maybe you got to walk a mile around him. So it's like, and that's where I say I'm timid, is like I'll get it going and then I'll backpedal for some reason. And I don't, and I don't know why, because I was just fired up, but now I'm
Half
like,
committed to it.
yeah, but then I'm like, wow, man, maybe we shouldn't push in too hard. But there's no checkbox yes or no. It doesn't work the same way every time. I mean,
That's true. It's very situational, as is
like
most.
I think of the bull Tyler missed 2 years ago. Guarantee you, pre that, me, my dad, or my brother would have never told you that was going to happen. We were on our way out, dude. We were tired, defeated, haven't heard a bugle. We just walked this big bull.
Yeah.
We're tired. It's like, well, it's pretty much a mountain out of here, so let's start walking. And I saw this big pool of water, and they're walking, and I started letting off bugles and smashing water and raking. I was like, what do I have to lose?
A
Nothing.
good piece of advice that I've heard too is that, and I'm guilty of this. I'll get into a situation, the bull's bugling, and I'm like, you know what? He's going to come out right there. But what I'm doing is I'm envisioning the bull coming out where I want him to come
Where
out,
you want him to come out.
but not where the bull is going to want to come out.
Yeah, where he's going to feel secure.
Right. And I think that it helps you in your hunting situation with putting yourself in that spot where the elk is going to be, not where you want it to be.
Yeah, big time.
And a lot of times a person doesn't realize, like, just because a bull comes in and he's bugling and he's mad, it doesn't mean he's going to come in and mow you over.
No.
Right. And we found that a lot this year too, where it seemed like you would get them talking, and then as you got closer, they got more hesitant about responding because it seems like maybe they felt you're close enough, I should be able to see you.
Yeah.
Or you're close enough that I'm going to sneak in that 30 of the 50 yards that's between us and see if I can get a peek at you before I make another noise.
Exactly. Because
right.
in a thick country, like, you don't want to give away your exact location as an elk.
Right. I know all the elk hunting videos that you watch are typically from somewhere down in the United States where there's no underbrush, and then you come up to Alberta and it's all underbrush.
7 feet tall, and you're wondering how you're even going to walk through it. Exactly.
And yeah, so putting yourself in a place where the elk is going to be, not where you want it to be, that's so important, right? Definitely. And I know I told the story on your podcast, but I screwed up big time on a bull with my bow this year. And it was one of those situations where we found, like, because you know it too, they weren't very vocal. It was a week off or something. And so I would go and I'd jump in a stand where I knew that there was deer, and there was always a chance that an elk could come through every few days. You get them on camera kind of thing. And I just listened to, like, bugle after bugle after bugle, right? And we were just, because we like to go after them in the morning. I think that's a great time to go after them because they're fired up from doing whatever they do all night.
Exactly. Yeah, you got a bigger window of them being worked up.
Right? But they weren't talking, and so we just kind of decided, you know what, there's no point in even going after them in the morning. We're going to wait until the temperature goes a lot higher. And so I'm sitting in this stand waiting for deer and hearing these bulls, and then I remember sending my dad a text. I was like, you know what, they're fired up this morning. And he's like, get out of your stand, we're going to go after them. All right, so we do. We get in on this herd where this bull is fired up, and every time we get a little bit closer, he pushes the cows back. And so we tried to do what a lot of guys call dogging the elk, right? Yeah. We dogged them. And then we got to a point where we're kind of at a crossroads, and I'm like, well, I know if we push any further forward, we're probably going to be right in the bedroom, and we're gonna blow everything from pillar to post. And so we decided to play a collar sequence, and I went left when I should have went right. And the long short of it, my dad as the caller is standing there staring at this elk, staring back at him, and I had no idea that bull was there until the bull decided, yeah, you're not an elk, and he took off.
I'm out of here.
Right? But there was that gap where it's like he closed that extra little bit of distance, but he did it quietly. And it amazes me every year how quiet an animal that big can be.
Dude. Well,
when they want to be known, oh my word, are they loud.
You'll hear them from 400 yards away run away.
Sounds like a bulldozer coming at you. But when they want to be quiet, they don't make a peep. It's like incredible. They just
put on, I don't know, they put on these moccasins. I don't know what they do, man.
But it was a situation where I thought, you know what, this bull's going to come out over here, and it was where I wanted him to be. It wasn't
where you wanted him, not where the bull wants to be comfortable.
Come. Exactly.
Yeah. That's hard to read too. Like,
sure it is.
Because you don't always know the next 30 yards, right? You can't see it, so
I know
you don't know what's that next little bit.
Sometimes it's inexperience, sometimes it's luck. You know, like. But yeah, one of those situations where it just played it wrong, and goes to show, like, you were going through the same kind of thing this year where it was you getting close and they just stopped talking. But so then
twice we were on a pretty hard chase, and actually there was one bull, dude. He was almost cutting me off, and then he was just gone. Like. He had cows with him. We found the trail. We saw where they were. We knew, and it was just, dude, he probably ran 10 miles. Like, he was just gone. It's like, what? What just happened?
Yep.
The wind wasn't even blowing at him. I don't even understand. He was cutting me off the whole time.
Just decided that he wanted to follow the ladies that were with him.
It's like, I just don't want to be here anymore. That was fun. Got you, sucker. I'm out of here. Yeah.
That's great. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, and we've talked about this before. This is a quote directly from you, and it's that if mule deer could bugle, they would be first place.
Yeah, I said that to my
in
dad last night or 2 nights ago. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
explain this to me. Like I haven't hunted mule deer a whole lot in my life. I've killed a few.
Hmm.
But what is the draw to hunting mule deer? And you also hunt them more in the rolling hills, open plains kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I love down south. I love mule deer. Like I, well, I got that terrible spot I had pre the Buzz property that I got permission on last minute. When I saw those two muleys come through, dude, like they fired me out more than giant whitetail. I was just like, holy crap, there's like 150 mule deer, like sub an hour from Leduc. This is incredible. Like they just get me excited. And I can't even tell you why. I really don't even know why, man. I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is. They're big. They're big bodied deer. Um, they just look tough. You know what I mean? Like they got that tough look to them. And like, man, I don't know. That's why I say if they could bugle, I think they would just be there because they've got everything except you can't really rattle. Well, you can, but you can't really rattle them. You can't really grunt them. So you really have to outsmart them. So it's a lot of it's a lot of chase, and I think that's probably why I love the chase. I love finding them. I love stalking them. Like I could sit through a spotting scope for hours, man. I love picking apart country. And maybe just because growing up with dad, maybe, right? That's what we did, and maybe
Is it
that
like
has
a
a little
is
bit
it a
to it.
stylistic kind of thing? Like you like the approach that you take to hunting
Yeah.
mule deer?
Well, it's like it's aggressive, but it's slow. You know, like an
Okay,
aggressive
so
in the sense of like if you got your 6 spots, you want to be here half an hour before the sun's up, and then you got your spot and scope out, and then I'm going to give that 20 minutes, and then I'm going to rip over there quick, and then I'm going to give that 20 minutes, and then and you're just it's very active that way, and then maybe you have a spot where you're going to walk in a mile or two, and then set up on a hill and put the glass up and try to
yeah.
find them. Like I think it's that. Honestly, like it's weird. I can't answer for you, but you had to love it. I don't know how to describe it, and I was trying to describe it to dad too, and there's just something about them, man. Like especially the big ones, like when they get those pop can bases and then they start getting the trash because they're an 8, 10-year-old buck and
Yeah.
they've survived that long in the middle of nothing. Like there's something to that, like I don't know.
It's interesting to call it an aggressive style of hunting because, like, elk hunting is aggressive. You're going in, you're
Yeah,
calling, you're
100%.
chasing, bugling
Yeah.
pulls. That's aggressive. But then to call mule deer hunting aggressive, like that to me is, I feel like,
Oxymoron, isn't that the word? An
oh,
oxymoron?
yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be a good way of looking at it because the contrast is so different,
Yeah,
right?
because if you look at how you do it, you're like, how is that aggressive? But I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes, you see that buck and it's like, you got to go now and you got to put on like 2 miles to cut him off. Or like, there's no thinking. You can't sit there and go, well, maybe, I don't know. It's like a slow pace, but then when it's on, it's on. Like, you got to go. And they don't give you much opportunity. They'll get up and start running too. So now you got to field judge that deer real quick. You don't get the trail cams footage. An elk, I mean, anybody shoots an elk, it's a trophy with a bow, especially.
Absolutely.
But a mule deer, you could have this big wide frame and he could be crabby everywhere, and you thought you're shooting a 180 and he's a 140, and then you're like, so it's kind of a mental game too, right? Like it's busy in the mind, I guess maybe is a better way to put it. It's like aggressive in your mind for big deer, not just to go out and shoot a mule deer. I mean, that's relatively easy, but to get a
Yeah,
good
but
one anyways.
big mature muley bucks, they're very smart.
Oh, dude, I would argue they're smarter than a whitetail, hands
Okay.
down. And I think
Really?
they would even, and it's just my opinion, but like, I'll give you an example. Like dad, oh man, way back when he was dead set on finding a big deer, and that was the year he put in the most scouting I think he's ever done. Not that he doesn't scout, but like he was out there, he was looking for the deer, and he had a tag, I had a tag, Tyler had a tag. So, he was looking for deer essentially for all of us, but he was looking for that 200 class deer. And there's this one big draw, and we decided to walk it because he saw it. He saw a buck. He saw one. He was like, "That's the one I want to shoot." And he was dead set on finding that deer. But this muley dude was so smart. We walked this draw, and we're going like 50 yards at a time. And you wouldn't think that a 100-foot draw is hard to look into.
Oh man, they hide it so
Dude,
easily.
Like
it's incredible.
We'd walk 50 yards and stop, and you're looking, and then all of a sudden you see like white of an ear, and you're like, "Oh, there's something right there."
Yeah.
Now you're staring at it, and they won't move, man. Like people think they're dumb that way, but they won't move, and you just can't figure out what they are. We pushed out a couple deer, and we were about a mile down this draw, and dude, like my spidey senses were going off, and I turned around, and that big bugger was running across the flat top. He was in there with 8 does, and we walked right past them. Yep. And I think that part amazes me is just how friggin' smart they are, man. Like how they can hide, and and that was a massive deer, and that bugger, I think it was twice he did that to us. Like,
yeah, it is amazing that the ability to hide, because like mule deer have a reputation of being dumb.
I know everybody calls them dumb,
right? And like it bugs me because like sure, but like if they're so dumb, go give them a hug. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're not going to stick around for that. Sure, you can bonk them with a rifle, but you can bonk almost anything with a rifle if you're in the right spot.
Get that close to him with a bow.
Exactly. It's hard to get close to a muley doe with a bow sometimes. Yeah. And I know somebody's going to listen to that and think, well, obviously you don't know how to do it. But I know how to do it, but sometimes it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
My dad shot this buck that he hunted based on a flash sighting the year prior. He knew this was a really special buck. He hunted this spot 20 plus days through the month of November.
Mm-hmm.
Connected on this buck on the last day, whatever it is, 20 plus days.
Yeah.
Hadn't seen him once during that time period. Hunted him 100% on a glimpse from the year prior.
Yeah.
And the buck taped out at just under 220. A giant.
Wow.
In an area that was, he passed up a lot of really nice bucks that most people, you or I, probably shoot
anytime.
In a heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
But he knew that there was this buck. And so part of that goes to the mental fortitude of the hunter, right? Because like that's really difficult to stay there and be like, you know what, I'm really going to hold out for this deer.
Yeah.
And I know I said earlier in this podcast that I don't hunt based on score, but there are situations where if you have a certain animal that you know is there, mentally you're like, that's the one. I'm going to stick it out for that one because I want to, right? And this is the fun part about hunting. Like, sometimes you go out there and it's like the first good one that walks out on my shoe, and then other times you're like, you know what? I have this thing in my mind where I'm going to wait for this.
I'm waiting.
Right? Not thinking that it's going to be at least 200 inches, but it's like, you know what? I want to get that animal because he's the hardest one to get.
Exactly.
Right.
The challenge is
but
there.
20 plus days and just hides so well, right? Like you said, even in just a little draw, it's like, you know what? You live there every single day of your life.
He knows every inch of that thing.
Oh, absolutely he does. He knows exactly how to walk along that side hill without being seen. He knows exactly where to bed down so that he gets scent and vision of everywhere that makes him vulnerable.
Yep.
And it's just, it's very cool. And to be able to finally trick them into that moment of vulnerability is, it's an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's a big mule deer is very rewarding.
Yes.
Like, so you can't measure it. I don't know. It's just something in me, but like, but talking about how they disappear, dude, I guided my buddy out for his first time ever mule deer hunting, and it sucked. He banged up his, what was it, his knee? Super bad. He didn't even think he could go, but there's a ton of snow down there. So it was a struggle, but I remember we were sitting up on a top, and I had permission in 3/4, and I was watching this flat top like 5 miles away. And you can see, when like when there's a big deer, he's a big deer. I'm not going to say he was 200. He's 5 miles away.
You know, at first glance, you're
but
like,
he's a big deer. Like, that's a shooter, no doubt. Might be a 180, might be 200, but he's big. And talk about like how they can just disappear and hide, dude. I watched him go all the way, and like this is a steep coulee system, and I saw him go over, and then I was like, okay, now we're gonna go in there. Like, I know you're banged up, but just hobble your way in, man. Hang on to me, I'll drag you. We'll do whatever we got to do. And dude, I picked apart that coulee system. We picked it apart for 2 hours. Saw 30 deer, different deer, not him.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Where'd
That's
he go?
incredible.
Like, where'd he go?
Yeah, you know what's funny about that too? I remember I've been drawn to go into Camp Wainwright once, and we went in for primitive season. It was my dad, my brother, and I. We drive up this one roadway, and it's no secret you road hunt in Camp Wainwright. That's how everybody does it because you want to cover ground. You have 3 days. Exactly, right? I thought this was an elk. His antlers were so tall, I thought it was an elk. All of us were like, wow, it's a deer, it's a mule deer. We pushed that piece of bush like 7 or 8 times. We had 20-something deer come out of there, and not a single one of them was this giant buck.
And he never came out once.
Never even came out.
Isn't that incredible?
It amazed me. Because I thought, you know what, like, we've stepped on every inch of this ground, and I don't know if he just, like, every time he hears you coming, he moves 5 yards this way and lays back down, or what the deal is, but so smart, right? And then people are like, oh, they're just dumb mule deer. Well, you know what, he was the exception to the rule then, you know, and so was this one and this one and this one. But, yeah, like, it just, like you said, you have that many deer come out, and that one just ceases to exist almost.
And then that one, yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah, dude, it's a challenge. I mean, and they're predictable too. Like, they are predictable to a degree. I remember I was teaching him as we were hunting, and these does came out, and I say, "Here's a good moment." He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I'm going to tell you exactly what they're going to do." He's like, "Come on." I was like, "Watch. They're going to go up that side because that's the least steep side. They're going to hit over on that little kind of a ledge on the coulee. They're going to stop there. The first one's going to stop. The rest are going to catch up, and they're all going to stop and stare at us." He's like, "No, they're not." Dude, they did it. Boom, stop, looked at us. Yeah. And I think that's why people call them dumb. It's because they always stop. They always stop and turn. But it's because they want to know if they've covered enough distance for safety. It's not, hey, I'm stupid, shoot me. Because they're usually 500-600 yards at that point. Yeah. And I mean, that's a long shot. The average guy's not making that shot. Let's be real. Like, 500 yards is a long shot. And so it was cool. He was like, that's incredible. But then on the other turn, you can't even find these bucks that you laid eyes on. It's like, where?
So one thing I noticed 2 years ago, we went down for antelope and very far south in the province. And we decided that we were going to, my brother and I, we brought our bows down because we thought we're going to go after mule deer after we're done the antelope thing because it's open with a bow. Absolutely. And after a couple days of doing it, it was a lot more than I expected it to be as far as difficulty went. Not that I thought it was going to be easy, but it blew me away how far those deer traveled from food source to wherever it was that they were bedding. So, like, hunting in a southern area like that, is that a common thing, or is that...
Absolutely. When you got the egg around, especially, right?
Because they travel miles and miles.
They'll go a long ways for food. Early season, like when I was living down there and I was always out driving and scouting, and I was always looking for critters. But some of those big bucks, man, they won't even come out of the fields all summer. Yeah. They'll just lay in the field all day.
See, like, I find whitetails always stay a little bit closer to their food source.
Yeah, they do. And it seems like they have a smaller home range, right? I mean, like hard winters when there's lots of snow down there, I mean, you're kind of forced to, check the fields because they're going to be close because they're not going to want to work that hard to go get their food, right? So I mean, in that way, they're a little predictable and a little easier. But then I say that and I'm a hypocrite because another year I went down with my buddy Shaner. I took him down there and it was the worst snowstorm. I'm just going to say Medicine Hat. If anybody really wants to try to figure out where I hunt, that's fine. But Medicine Hat. And biggest snowstorm they've had in years, like 20 years. Like, it was so bad that the plow would come through and we would follow the plow so we could get to where I wanted to be. And by the time we turned around, we were already pushing a foot of snow. It was just blowing us. Oh, it was wild. And that was the plan. I was like, dude, we just gotta just hunker around these fields that I have permission on, and just hopefully they're out there, because we can't walk this crap. Can't do any of that. We can't go anywhere. And I kid you not, dude, in the middle of nowhere, wind pounding, just plowing through this dried up creek, and there's this giant 4x3 in there with 20 does in the middle of nothing, just getting the absolute crap pounded out of them by the storm. And he's just out in the middle of nowhere, right? So like they throw you for a loop. I think that's what I like. They just, every time you think you got them figured, kind of like elk. Every time you think you got them figured out, no, I'm going to do this today. And you're like, what are you doing that for? What are you over there for? There's nothing there. It'll be like one bush, and that's where he's hanging out. And you're like, what are you doing? And if only they would bugle. And if they bugled, they'd be easier to find.
Yeah. Yeah, right? I hear you there. So the plan is to hopefully get drawn to go back down there this year?
Yeah, like there's a big, like I will get drawn just because of priority, and Dad will too. But when I took my buddy Brian down, just due to his health, like he just couldn't walk, we passed a deer that nobody should have ever passed. He was big. And then in that area, my dad saw a big deer. And after we talked, we concluded it's the same deer. And he's big. Like, I'm not going to speculate and whatever, because somebody will try to find out where I hunt.
400 inches.
Yeah, he's at least 420. Typical.
He's going to beat the Broder buck.
Yeah, typical, of course. But he was big, so we're going to... I mean, it's a hunt where we want to hang out, but that might be our focus, is to try to find him, and maybe Dad'll get to finally get that deer he's been looking for 40 years. We'll see.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
So, but yeah, it'll be good. I'm not gonna be like super picky. Like a 160 with good forks is
whatever gets you excited.
Yeah, like
no, exactly. That's
I'm not trophy hunting, so to speak. So
yeah,
but we have a hunch. We think there's a mega giant, so I'd like to go and hang out with Dad and try to maybe make that happen.
That'd be really cool. So other than that, another elk hunt plan, anything else?
Absolutely.
Anything else on the radar for this season?
No. I thought about doing moose, but I'm going to hold off on that. Just because where Buzz was, there's like 7 bulls that were hanging out in there.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know. I just feel like there's too much going on to try to do it all.
Yeah.
And then you burn your priority. And
yeah. I did that a couple of years ago.
Because I could get drawn for my antelope rifle or bow this year if I wanted to. Like, yeah. Of course, I want to do it all, but you need money to do it all. So
yeah, money, time.
I don't have
all the resources. Yeah,
I could come up with time. I just don't have the money.
Man, I know I drew. Oh man, I don't remember how many tags I drew all in the same year a few years ago, and I didn't even get to go after all of the animals. I ran out of time.
Yeah.
And you think, oh yeah, I'm going to get this hunt, and moose is only going to take me 4 or 5 days, and I'm going to rip down and do antelope for the 3-4 days, and then all of a sudden moose takes 2 weeks, and then you don't have time for antelope, and then you're like, oh well, there goes 14 years, and yeah, that's part of how it goes. And
I don't want to do that. I don't want to, because I think our draw system is just so bunk that I don't want to burn points like that.
And we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, we could dive into that stuff. The controversial, we'll get some real, ooh, screw you.
And hey man,
no, I think more people will agree with it, to be honest with you. But
I think so too. And who knows? The next time we talk, it's probably going to be another 3 years before a person gets drawn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
The point creep is so rapid. Oh man.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, you wouldn't think around Leduc that, well, I'm just going to say Leduc, that could be within 2 hours, whatever, but that you still need a priority 4 or 5 for a bull moose, like,
or more.
Like, what?
I know.
I don't get it. I can't shoot it with my bow anymore, but I have to wait 5 years for a draw now to hunt it with my bow.
I know. Well, even antelope
bogus,
is a
man.
prime example. I remember when I was a kid watching my dad get drawn on years 6, 7, and 8, and now it's 14, 15. Like it's outrageous.
Yeah, it's
and
wild.
I don't know if I don't want to dive into this too heavy, but
No.
I don't know if it's mismanagement of wildlife, if it's increase of hunters, a combination
Yeah, I don't
of
know.
both. Like it's a mess.
both.
I know that. You know.
And I think antelope too, like back home, if they get a hard winter, man, they die.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dad said that they've lost quite a bit of antelope just to hard winters too. So I'm sure that plays a little bit of a factor as well. But it seems like, but then yet, play devil's advocate or whatever you want to say. But then you go down there and you're seeing goats everywhere. And you're like, what do you mean they all died? Like, what do you mean their herd's down 40%? Why did I just see 900 antelope in 7 days?
Yeah.
In different areas, right? Like I don't know, man. It doesn't mesh. So
No, I hear you. And this is a great topic to dive into at
Yeah.
length another time.
Maybe we'll hold on to that one and do like
Sure. I'll put that one in the pocket.
Yeah, maybe that'll
sounds
be
like
like
a good
a
plan.
4-person combo or something. We'll have a bunch of
there you
people
go,
do
eh?
it.
I'll
4
round up a
screens
bunch of
going
people.
on and we'll cut each other off and get mad at each other. And that'd be entertaining.
No, I like the idea of that.
Yeah.
But Brandon, thank you so much. I'm so
man.
glad that we got to sit down. And thanks for taking time out of your schedule
Absolutely.
to sit down and do a podcast with me. It means
Absolutely.
a lot.
Thank you.
People can go follow you, Instagram, Held Accountable Pod. Thanks
Yes,
again,
sir.
man.
Yes, sir.
Congrats on a heck of a story with Buzz.
Yeah, man. That's cool.
It's so cool that it all came together that way. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this year plays out for you.
Yeah, man. Same with you.
On the Blood Trail has been brought to you by Man Mountain Company. Experience peak flavor and use code BLOODTRAIL to save on your next order over at manmountainco.com.